When is a train car also a rolling theater? Let's take a look. Hi, I'm Dan Cortopassi. Today I'm reviewing an HO scale track inspection car from Broadway Limited. My model is decorated for Chicago and Northwestern. Broadway Limited offers this car in several variations, including the CNW car I purchased, 2 UP versions from different eras, as well as FUBI versions for other railroads and undecorated. The MSRP for this model is $129.99. I paid $110.49 for my car from Factory Direct Hobbies. We'll start the model at 100 possible points. The car comes in a cardboard box with a clear plastic window. A plastic cradle protects the model. Also inside the box is a sheet with exploded view drawings and instructions for operating the lights. A sheet of thin plastic film helps to protect the car's paint job. This is a good box that should protect the model for storage and transport. The car that became Chicago Northwestern Fox River was originally built for Canadian National as a sleeper lounge 1087 named Cape Breton. It went to VIA in 1978. The car was rebuilt into a theater car and went to CNW in 1985. It was renumbered 420 and given the name Fox River. After the Union Pacific merger in 1995, the car became part of the UP Heritage Fleet with reporting marks UPP 420. At some point, the car was repainted into UP yellow and gray, but UP kept the Fox River name. It was rebuilt in 1997 and given fresh paint again in 2006. I compared the model to photos of the real car in the CNW era. As far as I can tell, the car body is a near-perfect match. A photo on page 42 of a colorful look at the Chicago Northwestern shows the car without the rear herald in 1986. In this photo, the car also lacks the round raised antenna dome on the roof. Photos from 1989 show the car with both of these elements, and they're still there in photos from 1995 and 1996. The car's overall appearance best represents the real car from 1989 through 1996. The arrangement of the underbody detail is not correct for the car in CNW paint, but it does match later photos of the car after it was refurbished by Union Pacific. I'm not going to deduct points for this because the Broadway Limited website clearly states that the underbody detail matches the UP appearance, letting buyers know what to expect. The car floor is removable, which I'll demonstrate later in the review. That means that if you wanted to rework the underside to be more accurate, you could do that without having to make modifications to the car body. The paint on the car is opaque and thin enough not to obscure rivets and other small details, and the markings are crisp and free of voids. The windows are flush-fitting and have thin gasket detail around the edges highlighted in silver. At the corners, the grab irons are separately applied wire pieces, and the corner steps are nicely rendered. On the ends, the car has more separately applied grab irons and working marker lights even on the vestibule end. Both ends have uncoupling levers and hoses. On the back end, the glazing in the large windows is very clear with minimal distortion, showing off the car's interior. This end also has a number of working lights, which we'll take a look at a little later. The modern-style diaphragm on the vestibule end is made of hard plastic and is not sprung. When coupled to my Broadway Limited Kennefic UP business car, which has the same diaphragms, there's quite a large gap between them. The car looks better coupled to one of my Walther's UP Heritage Fleet cars. On top, the car has a mix of molded on and separately applied detail. I'm assuming that the raised disc-shaped object on the top of the car is an antenna of some kind. If it's not, please let me know in the comments. In any case, the support is made of plastic, so be careful when handling the car as it looks a little fragile. It's a little disappointing that the short stretch of conduit between the raised antenna and the rear of the car is molded on. That might make it difficult for anyone wishing to backdate the car to its earlier appearance before the antenna was added. I don't think this is major enough to warrant a deduction, but it would have been nice if Broadway had used some wire here. As I already mentioned, the arrangement of the underbody detail is not correct for the car in CNW service. Even so, it's maybe a little nicer than some of the other cars that Broadway has released recently. There's even some freestanding plumbing, which is nice to see. The wheels are metal with the standard RP25 tread profile mounted on plastic axles. All the wheels pick up current. Like the Kennefic, this car has body-mounted metal knuckle couplers with wider-than-scale coupler pockets, no doubt to allow it to negotiate sharp curves. I like this compromise better than the swinging coupler mounts used on the Broadway UP Power Car. Looking for a match on the horizontal center line, the coupler on the vestibule end is slightly high, so I'm taking 5 points. The coupler on the other end is also high. All the wheels are in gauge according to the NMRA standards gauge. There is no significant body wobble. The car weighs 6.2 ounces, a little under the 6.75 ounce NMRA recommended weight for a car of this length. I think this is close enough not to cause issues for most people, especially since this will often be the last car in the train. The car is free rolling. The BLI website says the minimum recommended radius for this car is 18 inches. I don't have any curves that sharp to test it on, so I'm using some Kato 550mm curves, which are equivalent to a 21 5/8 inch radius. The car uncouples from the locomotive when I reverse direction on the curve. This happened more than once, so it's not a fluke. It works better when coupled to a Walthers passenger car, though the corners of the cars are close to touching. Long cars like this generally look and work better on broader curves. I'm testing the lighting on a DCC-powered track, which has a constant track voltage. Touching the roof here toggles the interior lighting on and off. It's on by default when you put the car on the track. If you hold your finger on this area, the lights will slowly dim and then brighten again. Touching near the vestibule end toggles the red marker lights on both ends. The touch points for the track inspection lights and CNW Herald are reversed on my car from the way they're labeled on the provided diagram. Touching in this area toggles the CNW Herald. And touching near the round antenna turns on the track inspection lights. I'm not going to deduct points, but it might be good if Broadway corrected this error in the documentation. On DC, the interior lights come on automatically at around 1/4 throttle. The other lights have to be turned on by touching the roof. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any memory, so if you want to use the markers, inspection lights, or herald, you need to turn them on every time the train starts moving. It takes a little coaxing, but if you spread the sides of the car, you can lift the floor out. I had to use some care to work the body off because these little pieces of black material here are soft and they kind of hung up on the corners of the car and the inside, but I was eventually able to get the body off of the chassis. So with the shell off, you can see there's a circuit board on the top with the springs that are for the touch points where you turn the lights on and off. And then of course you have access to the interior. So most of the visible interior parts are molded in this tan colored plastic. The seats are a darker color, and of course if you wanted to paint this you could. And also if you wanted to add people, little figures in here, you could do that too. Toward the center of the car there's something that looks like a conference table, and then over here toward the vestibule end, I flipped this thing around so we could see the other side. There's a little sink and a stovetop, it looks like. So there is actually quite a bit of detail in here, although most of it's just molded in the same colored plastic. When I put the car back together, I had to put in the end and the back first where all the seats are. And that's because this plastic material, or the black material up there, tends to get hung up in here, and this roof actually hung down in the observation area so you could see it, and I wasn't able to get it back together that way. So if you put this end in first and then push this end in, that works a lot better. Since it's my preference, I want to change the couplers over to Katie 158s. And I'll just take the draft gearbox screw out and then pull the whole draft gearbox. So as I mentioned earlier, the coupler boxes in this car are very similar to those in the Broadway Limited Kenefic car that I reviewed previously. In that car I ended up having to use Katie coupler boxes because the Broadway boxes didn't work very well with the actual Katie couplers. So that's what I've got here, and I also remember that I had to shorten the Katie box a little bit. So this one I've trimmed the back end off just maybe about 1/8 of an inch or so off of this. Really doesn't matter with the whisker couplers, you don't really need the back end of this anyway. And that will allow it to fit into the mounting area for the couplers. So I lucked out, and the coupler on the vestibule end came out at the right height. The one in the back I had to add a 10,000 styrene shim and also file down the lip at the top of the coupler box to make everything work. So I recently reviewed the Broadway Limited Union Pacific Power car, and I wasn't too crazy about the coupler design on that car. So I was really happy to see that Broadway Limited kind of kept their other coupler design similar to the UP Kenefic business car that I've also reviewed recently for this car. I think it works a lot better and it looks a lot better. And I like not having to add more parts to it, so that's really cool. If you're wondering, I got the Chicago Northwestern version because that was more era appropriate for my Donner layout, which is going to be set in the early to mid 90s. So I didn't want the post-merger appearance because I'm not modeling that part of the timeline. So now as to why a CNW car would be on Donner, I'm not really sure. However, One of my books does have pictures of a CNW executive train that they put together in 1986 that did actually come out to California and ran over the former Western Pacific and on to Oakland. So it's at least plausible, and that's good enough for me. So I'm going to enjoy using this car in my layout. Let's see what we've got. Both couplers were at the wrong height, so I took 10 points in the standards and operation category. That leaves us with 90 out of 100 possible points, which earns an A-. Overall, this is a pretty nice model. I'm giving it a green signal. I think Broadway did a really nice job on this car. If you're looking for a theater car for your HO scale layout, then I think you might like it. If you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel and I appreciate it. Stay tuned and thanks for watching.